many high school people do we have in here? All right, majority high school, great. I have a few announcements before we get started. For high schools, are you guys familiar with what an alpha sorter is? Y'all know what an alpha sorter is? Nope. No. Okay, sometimes it comes like this and it has all the alphabet right here and you can like slide answer documents in it this way. Or it comes in a long version where you can just pull it up and put the answer document in it. Would you guys want one?
Yes.
Yeah. No.
Okay. You said no, so I can know who to know with. Just one. Okay. Okay. We're just trying to help you guys sort for ELCs with the answer document. So that would be our gift this year. Because a couple of years ago we gave you the stamp. How many people don't have a stamp anymore for the boys? High school only. Okay, so let's see about the stamps. Okay, I'll try to see what we can do about the boys' stamps. Okay, this year, there's an oral administration change. Do you guys, and I'm talking to everybody, do you guys remember how we had to do Star Alt 2? And how the test booklets were tied to the students? And how it was a big headache because there was a lot of confusion. Well, they're moving like that for STAR as well. And so I know you saw in the weekly we said we would be emailing you out and asking you to verify your oral admin in large print. That's pretty much what you're going to have to keep a running record throughout the year of students needing large print and oral admin because we have to tie their registrations to, we have to know that when we register the students. So for each test administration, we'll be sending you your file of students that are registered to test. One, we're trying to make sure that you verify that we've captured all the students. And then we want you to verify if the large print and oral has been captured correctly. And if it hasn't, there's a short turnaround window. It would only be like 2 days. You're going to have to respond back and let us know if we missed a student. But we're getting the information from Easy IEP. So if Easy IEP is incorrect, then we need to start having conversations with our SPED people to make sure that that information is correct in Easy IEP. But this year we're going to be asking more of you to verify the information that we upload so we can correct the errors prior to the testing window. So that's just an FYI.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
What about 504 EL students who've been given oral administration by people that's not captured in Easy IEP that we may not know about until last minute?
You will know, the only time you would not have known about it was in December because the designated supports window wasn't open, but for the spring,
okay,
you will know.
That's all.
And that ties us into designated sports. In my data portal is a time, right now is the time for you to be capturing the sports for general ed students and lab students who are eligible for designated supports. Remember the window closes on November 1st. And it will reopen again in the spring. So right now you're capturing mainly the information for the fall ELC and for ACPs for the fall. But we will reopen it again in the spring. And then also remember, even though the teachers don't know this, the administrator on your campus still can capture supports after the window closes. So technically it never really closes, but it's just not available for the teachers.
What was the date again?
November 1st is the deadline. Okay, everybody. How many people tested on Chromebooks in the spring? Can you raise your hand if you tested on Chromebooks? Just one. Did you have any issues with the Chromebook? How many students did you test on the Chromebook?
We're talking about on which test?
Any STAR test, middle STAR.
Self-pass, we tested 726.
With no issues? Okay, that's what I need. All right. We will have multiple district-wide testing coordinator positions posted. There's a new system that HR just rolled out, and so there's issues with the posting, but eventually it will post. We hope to have it posted by next I know some of you received, everybody should have received the email. The majority of you should have received the email yesterday regarding years in U.S. schools. This year, we're trying to be proactive and capture that information prior to the till pass window, because for the last 4 years, we've had issues asking you guys to capture it in PowerSchool and in the Pearson system during the testing window. Like, we would upload and then you would only correct in the Pearson system. So it was just causing a lot of confusion, so we said we would just come out with a system and try to be proactive and catch this prior to the window. The emails will come out weekly every Wednesday at 9 a.m. For testing coordinators, this is more just FYI, informational only. This is a responsibility for the LEP department, but we just have you on the emails as an FYI. Students that want to attend magnet school and do not have STAR or Terra Nova scores can be assessed at your home campus between October 19th and January 31st. If they would like to test, they will need to contact Leticia Lozano, and she's standing right here. So email Leticia if you would like more information on that. I know our weekly emails are pretty much lengthy, but we're trying to give you all the information that we can think of that you will possibly need. One thing that we did mention last week is Remind 101. And Remind 101 is a system where we send text messages of upcoming events. And then, like, if there's a breakdown in the computers across the state, we'll text you. So we encourage you guys to sign up for Reminder 101 as an additional way of getting information from our department. This Thursday's weekly will have handouts for high schools regarding CIFA and load testing. The deadline for CIFA and load has passed for the fall. So this is more of just an FYI for you guys. We also gave this information to high school counselors. So if you can work with your high school counselors to collaborate to identify students who will need to test in the spring, and then submit that information to Jose Alonso if you have students that need to test in the spring. I think that is all the announcements that I have. Okay. Now we're going to have our Jennifer from PowerSchool come up and give you some information on PowerSchool.
You will need your, good morning, you will need your laptop at this time so that you can go do this process as Jennifer presents. So you have your laptop, please log in and she'll give you more information. Jennifer, you're going to be on the other one over on that side. Do you want to do it over here? Is it easier for you to see it, or are you good? Okay, look at this. This got so much.
Good morning, my name is Jennifer Kuei. I'm with Information Technology, Application Training and Support. So for this morning, I'm just going to go through some quick items that I have in regards to test coordinators. So I know I've seen some faces that have attended the PowerSchool Basics for Test Coordinator training, which is a 3-hour class. So from that 3-hour class, I'm just pulling a few items for you to look at. So for that test coordinator, you also have a manual that's on our website. So once we go through the information, I'm going to show you where that manual is located, so you have access to that information. So with the manual, I worked with Ms. Govan to make sure, as a test coordinator, these are the different things you'll need to know how to run within PowerSchool, or at least have some type of knowledge of who's running that information. So the first thing that we're going to do is log into PowerSchool. And then once we log into PowerSchool, then from there we'll go through a few items. So you're more than welcome to follow along on your laptop, or you can just look up here. But what I do want to preface is, you need to make sure that once you have access to that manual, you're going through all the different items within that table of content. Because you need to make sure as you go through, you actually have access to see the information. So as we went through training, there were some people that were either missing a submit button, or they couldn't see information at all. So it's recommended that you kind of go through the manual, go through all the steps, and that way you can send information to Ms. Govan in regards to, oh, I'm missing a submit button, or when I go to this page, it says insufficient privileges. So just please make sure that you review that information. So as I stated, the first thing I'm going to do is log into PowerSchool. Everyone on their Dallas ISD laptop.
Excuse me. Close that, her presentation out so that your thing can show there. And please accept our apologies. One of the things went out. That's how we're having school things. I mean, we're having technology difficulties this morning, but please accept our apologies. It's coming. It's there.
So on your laptops, you have a PowerSchool icon. That PowerSchool icon will essentially just be a P, and it says PowerSchool. Once you click on that icon, it takes you to a screen to identify how are you logging in. On the PowerSchool icon, you have the teacher's access, you have substitute access, and you have admin access. So you would fall under the admin access. The direct link is dallasisd.powerschool.com/admin. That's the login link you would use to get to the login page. You're logging in with your EAD username and your EAD password. As I stated, we're just looking at a few items versus looking at your entire manual. So the items I'm going to go through is identifying how do you find inactive students. Inactive students, either they left from your campus or they left from another campus. Then we're going to look at a student's demographic page. What does it look like once you click on a student and look at their demographics link? From there, we'll also discuss new to Texas. So with new to Texas, when students are enrolled or re-enrolled, they have to be coded as either e-enrollment or EOS, enrollment out of state. So then you are going to be able to pull students that are identified as enrollment out of state. So looking at how you pull that information. Then from there, we're going to look at a few reports. So students enrolled between dates and students withdrawn between dates. So looking at that information, and then looking at, for high school only, looking at their AAR.
remember, this training does not take the place of you reading the manual. This is an overview. You will have STAR training for December EOCs and ACPs for December high school, because y'all know y'all all together right there. Middle school will be ACP training only for you on November the 12th. I think that's the date at the top of my head, November the 12th. So this is just a quick overview of some things to expect for this upcoming year. What's new? Form numbers, TELPAS, test administrative manuals, calendar updates, substitute assessments, and the approved CR. Next, please. Form numbers will be included on all books. Last year there were some differences, so the state decided that they're going to put form numbers on all STAR and EOC books from grade 3 all the way through high school EOC. So you'll find a section, so make sure that you put your form numbers on, the form numbers will be both, okay? Substitute assessment, high schools, EOC, substitute assessment. There's a change in the law, and so beginning with December 2019, substitute assessments are no longer included in accountability calculations. So a substitute assessment bubble will be going away. It will no longer appear. So you see at the bottom, it's no longer there anymore. So students will have to take the test at least one time before they're able to use a substitute assessment beginning this year. That's a new change.
Can I ask you a question? But we will still know. So if they take it and fail, I'll see something that says substitute assessment, so I know I don't have to retest them again.
Yeah, you'll know.
I'll know.
You'll get a list of those kids that you'll say, yeah, do that.
It's in the needs to pass process.
Right.
Yeah, I saw it in that. I just want to make sure.
And we will talk more about this in November, okay? Calendar update, you know they don't allow you to test on Mondays anymore, so that's the calendar update. So testing will begin with Tuesdays and on, and that includes the summer as well. So no testing on Mondays. Also for middle schools, they updated for 8th grade online for grades 8 science and social studies, which will start on a Thursday of the week before the other test will be online. The online and the paper will be together. Okay, so that's good this year. We'll talk more about it as we get ahead of it. We just want you to start knowing it now. Next, please. TELPAS test administrator manuals. Well, the state has decided for TELPAS, they will send you only test administrator manuals. That means the lab manuals. You know, when the teachers have to read the instructions in the lab. So we're going to order them for you. We're considering ordering 5 because there's 5 manuals for that, for those who are going to do the test administration. Will that be enough? Yes, 5 will be enough because it's only one person administering it at a time, and most of you don't have more than 5 labs, correct? Okay, good deal. Now, the Rater manual, the one you have to train your teachers and all that good stuff, is only going to be available online. So as soon as they post, we will let you know, so that way you can go ahead and print them off and get ready to start reading them. So you'll have to print off your Rater manuals. Don't call us and say, oh, we don't have our Rater manuals. They're only available online. They will not send them out. You know, at the end of the day, you know, that's a dollars and cents decision. That's from the Kedra, nobody else, okay? Going forward, you know, this year with TELPAS, the online, you know, those, the certificates to say that they've been trained, now they will be saved in the online training center again. So you know how they would delete them in June or July? So this year going forward, they will be saved. So we get a new teacher on board. They say, well, I already trained. Then you say, well, give me your certificate. Or you still have the right to say, as a test coordinator, I'm still going to train everybody. So just keeping that in mind, they will save their certificates. So because we got a few calls, not as many as we used to, but we did get a few calls. Now, the DCCR, that is your District Campus Coordinator Resource, is online. So we want to be able, there are some new features, more interactive. That is your manual to be able to do different things. They've changed it and updated. And we're going to get ready to go through some samples so that you can kind of see those. There's an improved search feature. It provides options to convert all resources to one PDF. and there's a new quick click, and it's color coded. It is really a little bit better. We just have to get used to using it. So once you use it, you'll feel more comfortable. We're about to do a little exercise to give you an opportunity to go through the DCCR and to be able to get more comfortable with it. How many of you have at least found the DCCR this year, just kind of logged into it? Just raise your hand high so I can see and be honest if you have not. Okay, well that's good. Those of you that have not, we're going to give you an update and a refresher for that. Y'all have on your tables, you're ready to navigate the DCCR. Did y'all pick up the question? What color is the sheet? Orange sheet? Green. Thank y'all. The green sheet. So you're going to work together as your team. The next one. So tables. This is table 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? Table 8. Now you just got one person over at table 8. You want to move over here to table 7, you can, okay? So you won't be by yourself. Tables 1, 4, and 7. You're going to look at questions 1 through 4 and question 13. Tables 2, 5, and 8. You're going to look at questions 5 through 8 and question number 14. And tables 3 and 6, you're going to look at questions 9 through 12. We're going to give you about 5. Oh yeah, I am. We're going to give you a few minutes to be able to do that. And I'm going to show you how to find it. That's it? All right, that's it, guys. Let's come back together. We'll go over it. Now your hands are Keisha.
Okay, I have the, good morning, everybody. I've got the first couple of ones. So, we've got tables 1, 4, and 7 doing this first couple of ones. All right, question 1. What browser should not be used to search within the DCCR? Explorer. And where did we find it? Oh, did it say? The best browser options for viewing the coordinated resources through the website is through Firefox or Google Chrome. Internet Explorer ID should not be used, and it's just not been updated with a lot of compatibility issues rather with websites. Okay, so the second question is, who can tell me when the last date was made to the name? And the correct question was October 7th. And do we know where we found that? What's new? Okay. All right, number 3. Tell me, what are the statewide testing programs mentioned in the DCCR manual? Should be a total of 4. Okay, so we've got STAR Alt 2, TELPAS, and TELPAS Alt that was piloted into the 4. And where did we find those? Those of y'all who got them. This is tables 1, 4, and I think 7. That's right. It's right under question. Texas Assessment Program pilots. Okay. All right, and let's go to 4. Y'all should know this. Do students in charter and private schools participate in the Texas Assessment Program?
Charter, yes, private, okay.
All right, so the answer was yes. All students enrolled in the Texas public schools and charter schools are expected to take the Texas Assessment Program. Okay. So where do we find that one? What page did y'all find that one? If you're looking at it on your phone, depending what phone you have, it's not 100% mobile compliant yet. I can't see very well what other person is. So, I'll go ahead and just give you 5 since it's up here. And the last one I'm going to work on is our students in grades 3 through 8 who are retained. They got held back a year. Are they required to still test? Okay. The answer is yes. Students in grades 3 through 8 must be tested at their enrolled grade level as required by the TPA code 39.023.8. And exceptions to this requirement may exist for kids receiving instruction above grade level. Okay? And we also found this in the same area for STAR participation requirements.
Okay, number 6, what are the administration time limits for each STAR test? Four hours for
Everything but English.
4 hours for, I'm hearing it.
Biology, algebra, and US history.
Okay, so high school, we're saying algebra, biology, US history. What about if it's English 1 or 2?
5.
Okay, secondary, middle school, what are your times?
4 hours.
4 hours.
Okay.
STAR administration, test administration scheduling. What is the new legislative requirement regarding testing on the first day of the week?
No Monday test.
No Mondays. And then here is the information with the House bill that just basically tells you no testing on the first instructional day of the week, beginning with the 1920 school year. And it gives you the rationale for their change. Okay. STAR makeup testing. Can students that get sick in the middle of a STAR exam make up an exam on the next school day within the testing window?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. Makeup testing can be used for a student who becomes sick and leaves campus during the test. If the student has not completed the assessment, he or she may complete the test upon return to school within the scheduled administration window, and within the DCCR, it gives you some additional guidelines that tells you that they can't go back and work on previous sections, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to read the complete part of the DCCR that tells you how to handle this as far as paper clipping, where they are, and it also tells you how to handle it if it is an online assessment as well. So as far as not submitting, but logging out instead. Okay? Is this me too? Okay, number 9, STAR medical exclusion. When are campus testing coordinators expected to submit documentation on students that are terminally ill or receiving short-term medical treatment? Did anybody find it? It is the, say it again.
Friday of the week following the administration.
Yes. You have to submit it on our Monday. Forms must be submitted by the Friday of the week following the test administration, and the form is submitted for each STAR administration. It is a specific form, and within the DCCR you can find, I believe it is a link to the form that for medical exclusions. Number 10, what score code should be indicated on the answer document for the medical exclusion? I'm hearing some other, I'm hearing some A. The student's answer document should be marked A for absent. The Student Assessment Division at TEA will provide a file of all approved medical exclusions to the Performance Reporting Division so that the records can be excluded from participation rate calculations. So it will be an absent.
This is our second year having to do this. Again, when we go into the ELC and STAR's administration in the spring, we'll give you more information. I know last year was kind of weird because we have to wait until the last day to submit this, but these students, these are your like terminally ill students, they get marked absent. which listed is not a responsibility for a campus TC? I gave you the answer. The answer is the reminding test administrators how much time each students have left to complete the exam. Whose responsibility is that? That's the test administrator's responsibility. What are the requirements for using paraprofessionals as a test administrator? Can you use them as a test administrator? Yes, yes. And Rita's going to go over this maybe in her section, but new on the oath this year, there's a place for them to sign if they're a paraprofessional, and then someone with a certification would have to follow up and sign for them, saying that they're going to supervise them during the test administration. So the oath looks a little different this year. We'll go over that probably this in a short. But paraprofessionals must be supervised either directly or indirectly by a certified professional on the campus. What students are classified as new to Texas? And we've talked about this several times. Who are our new to Texas students? Students from out of state or out of the country, starting August 1st through July 31st. So, for example, if a student was in Garland for one day, but on August 2nd, he was in Garland, enrolled in Garland August 2nd. On August 1st, if he was in Mexico and he came to Dallas on August 30th, he would still be considered new to Texas. It's based off the school year, the entire school year. So anyone that enrolled from August 1st to July 31st from out of the country or out of the state would be considered new to Texas. What score code should be used by the district for a student who chooses or refuses not to test? Is score for everybody though?
No.
Who is it for?
Grades 3 through 8. First
Grades
time.
3 through 8 will have score. For students who take ELCs for the first time, they are scored. If this is a repeater tester for high schools, they will be marked O for other. They're not required to test, but we're strongly encouraging them to test so they can graduate. For students taking an ELC retest in June, the answer document should be voided. Again, we'll go over all of this when we do our administrative training sessions for STAR. Are there any questions? Okay, now Rena will come up and present to you on test security.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rena Davis. I'm with the Office of Test Security. I want to apologize a little bit right now before I get started. Normally, this training is about 3 hours. I condensed it to 2 hours, but you can see what time it is. So if any of it feels rushed, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to make this interactive, so I'm going to do a little bit of teaching. And I have 3 activities planned that I would really, in order to make it interactive and hands-on, want to get through. So some of it, like I said, may feel a little bit rushed, but we'll get through it. This is not there it is. This is not on the website yet because of the activities. I didn't want anybody to get on it and start doing them before we got to it. So I will put it up after our last meeting on Tuesday.
All right, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about your responsibilities. We did discuss a little bit of that at the last training when we went through the DISD test security manual. We're going to talk about some of the testing conditions on your campus, what should your rooms look like, etc. We're going to identify different types of irregularities, and then we're going to talk about how you submit an irregularity on the TISV form. And like every good classroom, you start with an LO and you end with the DOL in a session. So your learning objective today, as I mentioned, will identify different types of testing irregularities. How can you prevent them? And then understand procedures for reporting those irregularities, because they will happen, I promise. And then your DOL at the end of the session will be to analyze an irregularity scenario, determine the type of irregularity, and then how do we report it. All right, some of your responsibilities, and we're going to do a few before, a few during, and a few after. When you get your materials, please be sure that you count. Count all your booklets, count your answer documents, count your manuals. Don't wait till a couple of days before, oh, I got plenty of time. No, you need to have time to order additional materials if you need them. So count. You also want to make sure that what you get is what on the packing list. You get a packing list, it should match up. If not, you need to let either us or whoever sent them to you know that you didn't get what was on the packing list. You're going to start looking at your testing locations, assigning test administrators, assigning rooms that you're using. It should be rooms that the kids are used to using, if at all possible. I know if you have to do a small group with one kid, you may have to put them in an office and they may not be used to that, but hopefully they've been tested one-on-one before if that's what they're supposed to get, individual administration. We do not recommend you use any large group testing sites like the cafeteria, the gym, or the auditorium. And this is more common at the high school level, where maybe you want to put a lot of chairs in the gym because you think it's easier. That is not a conducive environment for testing. It's a lot of distractions for the kids. You must have one test administrator for every 30 students. So if you have 300 kids in the gym, you got to have at least 10 test administrators in there the whole time. So we do not recommend that as an option. Please be sure to review all your rosters so that the kids get the accommodations and the correct tests that they're supposed to get. That will also help in determining how many rooms you need and how many test administrators you need. You're going to train everybody on your campus when you get closer to testing. Make sure your principal has all the information regarding all the testing policies and procedures. Train as many staff members as possible. Remember, there's always a snow day involved, and so some people may not show up and you need to pull others to be test administrators. You're going to keep all your documentation from training. Your sign-in sheets are critical. We mentioned that the state trained us. Well, I actually went to the training yesterday, and one of the things the state does always ask for is, was the test administrator trained, and is there a sign-in sheet documenting that that person was actually there? And in some of the cases that I have investigated, they did not go to the training. That falls back on you because you didn't verify that everybody got trained, all the people that you used. And then you're going to keep all your documentation from training. I will ask you for that information, but you have to keep it on your campus for 5 years. Or you have to keep it for 5 years. You can send it to records management if you want to. During testing, you're going to follow all the test administration instructions, and so will your test administrators. Please be available during testing sessions. Please walk around. Your test administrators may have questions, and if they don't find you, they may ask a hall monitor who may not know the answer, but may give them an answer and maybe get the wrong information. So be available. You're going to call us in the assessment department, or you're going to call me in the Office of Test Security. If anything comes up, don't wait till afterwards, because once it happens, you might need an answer immediately to move forward. Be sure you monitor the test sessions. As you're walking around, listen. Are they reading the directions? Look in the doors. Can you see any kids with cell phones? Monitor what's going on. And then if you do use any non-certified campus personnel, be sure that you're supervising them. And I don't mean you have to stand there watching them the whole time. Just know that if they do anything wrong, it comes back on whoever is supervising them. And usually it's the test coordinator. After testing, we will always, and not just after testing, each day, but at the end of the window, keep all materials secure. You're going to have a materials control form, and we'll talk more about that when you get closer. It's a form where you write down the range of test booklets that you assign to a test administrator. So when the test administrator comes in, they count how many booklets and answer documents. They say, yes, I have 25. This is the range of numbers, and they initial. And then when it comes back in the afternoon, you count them, make sure they brought back 25, check the range, and then you initial. That's materials control form. You're going to lock up materials after testing each day. And be sure that when we give you the critical deadlines, that you return all the materials used and unused by those critical deadlines. If you do not return them, it is an irregularity. You found some answer documents on another table, so you returned them late. That is considered an irregularity. You're going to report irregularities immediately, so you're going to call the assessment department, and that's usually for procedural activities, and I haven't given you that definition, but for your common, that's not a good word, but your procedural irregularities, call the assessment department, and they'll give you guidelines on what the next steps will be. If it's a serious violation, like staff cheating, somebody told you that the test administrator was giving the kids the answers, you call me immediately, and then I'll walk you through the next steps. All right, testing conditions. And this is talking about your classrooms and what's going to happen during testing. Make sure the rooms are comfortable. If you have to make announcements, do it before testing or at the end of the day after testing has ended. Hopefully lighting will be adequate. I know sometimes in the past we've had outages and the air wasn't working and there wasn't light, so hopefully the rooms have windows. Make sure every student has a table, chair, desk, computer. We're also going to continue to talk about using dividers. In a situation like this room right here, if you had to use this for testing, which would not be conducive for testing to begin with because it's a large group, but you must have dividers. Now, if kids use individual desks, a lot of the schools, more elementary and middle, they have what they call the privacy folders that they put on the desk. And those are lovely. Know that if you do online testing, they also have to have dividers. Because you can see the screen if the kids are sitting right next to each other. So you'll have to have some kind of barrier for the kids not to be able to look around to the next computer. Post your signs as needed. Doors should remain open, with the exceptions of the portables. Portable doors are normally closed for security reasons, and that's okay. But inside the building, they should be open, unless if you have oral administration, it may get loud and distract the room, so you can close the door for that situation. Or maybe you have like a behavior unit group testing, and they get loud, you can shut those doors. Make sure there's enough room in the testing room for backpacks, duffel bags, purses, because those items are not supposed to be near where the kids are testing. They should be, like right now, some of y'all have purses and bags under your tables. They should be up here at the front, or to the side, or tell the kids not to bring them, or put them in their lockers. And then all instructional displays, bulletin boards must be covered up, regardless of the subject. You're testing math, but it's in a science room. Well, this is all science stuff. It's still instructional. You need to cover all those materials. Your test administrators are going to be properly trained before testing begins. And part of that is looking and reading over the test directions. You should give them a copy of the manual, or a copy of the manual, so they can look over the instructions. They should not be reading the directions on day of testing for the first time. They need to have time to look at it. They can't answer questions the students ask about specific test items. They are answering specific questions about they are answering the kids' questions about specific test items. That's why I have a job, because I get to investigate those situations. They must be actively monitoring. That means walking around, making sure the kids are working on the right section. They can sit down and take a break, but they must be watching the kids when they sit down. Test administrators and hall monitors cannot be using computers, laptops, can't be on their cell phones, they can't be grading papers, they can't be doing anything but watching those kids. And we know that 4 hours or 5 hours, depending on the test, is boring, but that's all they can do is watch the kids. They can't be reading the test questions in the test booklet or looking at the answers on the answer document other than to verify that the bubbles have been marked on the back of the answer document. And again, I have a job because test administrators are doing that. They're reading the questions. They must collect the test booklets and answer documents when each kid has completed testing. We have a lot of cases where the schools will tell the test administrators, do not pick up the test booklets from the kids until the 4 hours is up, or 5 hours. If a kid gets done in 2 hours, they need to be collected. You can ask them, are you sure you're done? Okay, and that's it. You cannot force the kids to keep those booklets on their desks. And what happens is, they'll put the answer document in the booklet sometimes, and then the kid will put their head down on the desk. And as you're walking around monitoring and you see that, that's a problem. So tell your teachers they can't force those kids to keep them the whole time. And make sure that those test administrators are monitoring during lunch and breaks. Kids aren't supposed to be talking about the test during lunch, and therefore the test administrator or an adult that has been trained must be monitoring those conversations. Cell phones and electronic devices, and I had to add the word before on that first bullet because what I'm finding is that materials will be on the desk when the kids come in. So the kids still have their cell phone, they're taking pictures. When the kids come in, you tell them to put their materials over to the front, you collect the cell phones. Once all of that's taken care of, that's when the materials get passed out. Okay? So those test administrators need to collect the cell phones before the materials go out. They don't get returned until the campus has finished for the day. If a class finishes in 2 hours and the kids get those cell phones right away, guess what they're doing? They're texting their friends in other rooms and they may still be testing. So wait the 4 hours, wait the 5 hours. Now you may have kids with extra time and we're not going to worry about them. But when most of the testing has finished for the day, that's when the test administrators give the cell phones back to the kids, not when they finish testing in that room. Kids don't get their phone back during lunch. If a kid needs to make a phone call, somebody can escort the kid to the main office and they can use the phone there. And test administrators and hall monitors are not allowed to use these devices either, except in cases of emergency. So I do get a lot of reports of test administrators being on their cell phone, whether it's texting, on Facebook. They can't be using it as a watch or a clock or anything like that. And then snacks, and this is not as big of a problem at the secondary level, but they're not recommended. Kids are not going to die of starvation if they don't get a snack in the middle of testing. They get breakfast in the classroom. If you're worried about them running out of energy, then get your lunch. After 2 or 3 hours of testing, break for lunch. Kids are messy. They'll touch the answer documents, they stick, and it becomes a problem for scanning. Also know that you don't stop the clock to take a break, to give a kid a snack. The only time you'll stop is for lunch. We have EK regulation, and it's also in the DISD test security manual about teachers can't test their own kids, and at the secondary level, it's usually they don't test kids in their own content. So if your Algebra 1 teacher can't be testing, your geometry teacher shouldn't be testing Algebra 1. It's not the same subject, but it's still math. Okay, so you get your English teachers to test your math, or your math to test your English, or something like that. Specials, elective teachers are also allowed to be test administrators for any core subjects. And we've had a lot of problem with instructional coaches they're familiar with the content and then they're allowed to be test administrators or hall monitors, and we're getting a lot of irregularities from those situations. Actually, my drink is right there. Yeah, my drink is better. So if you have a math instructional coach, they can help you. Thank you. They can help you by being a test administrator for an English test, or a science test, or a social studies test. They can't be hall monitors. If they're a math instructional coach, they can't be a hall monitor for the math test. We're getting too many cases where they're walking into the rooms and helping kids. So please be mindful of that. Seating charts must be completed for each room, whether it's a whole class, individual administration. Like I said, if you have one kid that you had to put in the counselor's office because it was a one-on-one, you have to have a seating chart for that room. Small group, as well as consolidation rooms. Maybe at the end of 4 hours, you have some kids that get extra time, so you're moving them all to the library. Then you create a new seating chart with all those kids for the library. That's considered a consolidation room. There must be a picture, there must be a diagram of the room and where each kid was seated. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And they must be accurate and complete. Okay, seating charts. These are all the required elements, all the things that you must have on the seating chart. So you might want to at some point make a copy of this or create you a sample seating chart with all these things so that your test administrators definitely put all this information on there. We listened to you. We created some new seating charts that are currently on our website. We have a 2-page and a 3-page. If you have a testing room with 25 or less students, like your small group, you can use the 2-page, okay? If you're testing more than 25 kids, you're gonna have to use the 3-page. And then you have options. You have a blank one that you can just print out and your test administrator can write on it. We have one that's fillable. So a lot of the information you or they can actually type in. So there's less to write. So you have those options. The most important part of everything I've said today so far is that last sentence. You may use whichever seating chart you want as long as it has all the required elements that I showed you on the previous slide. Now some of you, last year we started looking at the seating charts when you brought your materials for quality control. We're going to continue to do that. And so some of you were pulling out seating charts from years ago. You need to put those away because the categories, those required elements, are not on those seating charts. Now, some of you also, because of everything we required, last year, created your own with all the required elements. That is perfectly okay. Some of you high schools with lots of kids, you created these great seating charts that had all the information on there. Use them again if you want, as long as all the required elements are on there. And then if you do submit incomplete seating charts, which many people did, that's considered an irregularity. So that is a very preventable irregularity. Make sure those seating charts are complete. All right, our first activity, and I need some assistance to help pass out. Everybody will get a copy of this scenario. And for those of you that came to my training last year, it's similar. It's similar, it's not exactly the same. And what you're going to do on this is circle any potential test security issues that you might come across in a testing room. Don't be afraid to circle it. If you want a copy of this later, I can email it to you if you want to use it with your teachers, because a lot of the times the teachers don't really understand what you're talking about. You're circling any potential test security issues. Everybody have 15? Anybody get 16? I got one hand up. Anybody get 17? Okay. Anybody get 18? Okay, I don't have 18 on there, but, or maybe it is, but I don't know about it. Everybody done? All right. Why don't some of you start letting me know what you see? Raise a hand or yell out or something. What? Facebook Live? Let me mark that off. So you do see that on the teacher's desk, they've logged into Facebook. Are they allowed to be on the computer? No, so it shouldn't even be up. They were using it before testing, and they forgot to shut it. No, we don't even need to get on to begin with.
Would the cap be a violation?
The kid with the cap, only unless it's a dress code issue.
Okay.
It's not an irregularity, the kid on the cap. Another hand. Yes, ma'am. There's no clock. Very good. And for those of you brand new people, you don't even know because we haven't talked about it, but there should be a clock available. One, the kids need to know how much time is left. Now, a couple options you have if you don't have a regular clock posted are what? You can put the computer with the time on it. That's the only time you can have the computer on. What else could you do? You can write it on the whiteboard. If you have an old school watch, not a smart watch, then you can write the time up on the board. You can't be using your cell phones. You can't be using your smart watches to tell time. Okay? Another hand. Don't be shy. Go ahead.
There are more than 30 students, so you need an additional test administrator.
Excellent. I hadn't mentioned that you needed another test administrator, but for STAR EOC, it's one for every 30 students, so there's, I believe, 33. That's okay, but you need to have another test administrator in there. Okay? Somebody else, raise your hand. Some of you, y'all said you got at least 15. Yes, ma'am.
Headphones.
Headphones on the student, very good. Right down here, the young lady has these pink headphones on, but they're not even turned on. Doesn't matter. All electronic devices must be either put in their backpacks or collected before the materials have been passed out.
Proctor with the phone.
Oh, hold on. Was there another question about the headphones? Yes.
Could it be the accommodation for their autistic?
If it's an accommodation, then that's acceptable, but I would probably put them in a small group. Okay.
They would have to.
All right.
She wouldn't be doing it on paper anyway.
Sleeping at the front.
Kid that's asleep at the front. What does that tell me? Well, not that he's not working. The test administrator's not actively monitoring, and that is an irregularity. Not the kid sleeping, the fact that the test administrator's not monitoring. Okay, and he's also got popcorn on the desk. Are we allowed to have food or snacks? No.
And you have a Mountain Dew there too.
There's a student with no test.
There's a student with no test. Maybe he finished. Maybe he never got one. These are just potential test security issues. We're not saying they're all irregularities. And I'm going to go back to somebody also mentioned with the popcorn, the soda on the desk. You saw that too, right? There will be exceptions, like me coughing up here. Maybe I needed some water because then it could be on the floor. We don't want that stuff to spill on the test, the booklet or the answer document. All right, what else? Backpack, where's the backpack?
Under the chair and at the back of the seat.
Under the chair, do you see that one? And then the one on the back of the chair, right? What else?
2 airplanes.
The map on the wall, anything instructional regardless of the subject must be covered. We don't know what subject is being tested here, but that is considered instructional. What else? The laptop, that's an electronic device, so that shouldn't be out. If it's a situation where it's online testing, it would be in a separate And sometimes in some rooms, you do have online testing taking place with paper pencil. This is not one of those, okay? Books on the desk, you saw the textbooks. Now, if it's English and they have dictionaries, well, everybody's supposed to have a dictionary, but that's not a textbook. Something green or blue. Actually, and I know it was hard, and first of all, let me go back. Keisha, thank you so much for being the one that created this for us. That is considered a lap desk. You know, those little ones that you put on. Is that good or bad? Bad. No, that's not good. Like I mentioned, kids should be having a desk or a table or something solid. That's why we don't want you to test in the auditorium if they don't have the tables. Well, besides other reasons, but yeah, that's a lap desk. So no, either put that kid in another room or get him a desk. What else? Paper airplanes. Is that an irregularity all by itself? No, but what do we know is happening? They're cheat sheets. Yes, those are cheat sheets. I know that sounds ugly, but yes, that's what they are. What else? Test administrators on the cell phone. Probably trying to tell time. That's not good. What else?
Girl next to the boy sleeping, looks like a white, looks like maybe a cell phone in her lap.
Yeah. The girl next to the... No, I see what you're seeing. No, that's no.
That's the crown.
Or a cheat sheet.
I think that got there by mistake. Sorry, that was not supposed to be one. And I actually only have one more. The whiteboard. What's on the whiteboard? Yeah, we got the teacher on the cell phone, the math problem on the board. There shouldn't be anything on the whiteboard that looks instructional. I mean, okay, maybe this is an English test, so somebody would think it doesn't matter. It's still considered instructional. So we want to erase any boards of any instructional information. So somebody said they had 18. What was the other one?
Yeah, it looks like that Carrie's turn. There's no base, so we don't know for sure.
Yeah, there's no face. No, there wasn't supposed to be one that the kid was turned. But thank you for looking at all these things. This is an activity you might want to do with your test administrators because you can tell them all day long to do some of these things and they don't really understand what it looks like in the classroom. Okay? And so if you want an electronic copy of this picture, I can send it to you. Send me an email. Fred is giving you the answers for you to take with you. All right, so let's...
I have a question. Okay, let's say you have a situation in high school where you have a student that's sleeping and the test administrator has already tried to wake them up and then they've walked around and they come back and they still keep falling asleep. And let's say a DISD monitor, one of your guys that you sent out, is that going to be a dean or not?
Well, and what she's saying is, what if I have a kid in high school that keeps sleeping, the test administrator's walking around and waking them up, and they still go back to sleep, and then the monitor, the DISD monitor comes there, are we going to get a ding? Well, first of all, that's the least of your worries, is about the monitors. I train the monitors, and so yeah, they're going to put whatever they see for that 2 or 3 minutes they're standing at the door, but don't worry, it's not that big of a deal, okay? Because we can have that discussion. The test administrator is going to say, yeah, I've been trying to wake him up and he's still asleep. But before it even gets to that point, get some help. Tell your test administrators, if you have kids that are constantly falling asleep, call for an assistant principal, call for you, and then you get involved and say, this is what's going to happen. You want to stay asleep? Okay, but we're going to score your answer document. So try to take care of it another way instead of worrying about the monitors. Okay? All right, let's keep on going. Test security and confidentiality. A lot of this has to deal with, when we talk about test security, is protecting the secure content. So where do we find secure content? Of course, in the test booklets, any online assessments, whether you do online testing for STAR, EOC, TELPAS, those questions are on the screen. The kids can see it. The test administrators can see it, so we have to keep that information as secure as possible. The online test tickets, any completed answer documents. We haven't talked a lot about STAR Alt 2, but those stimulus images are considered secure. They shouldn't be shared with anyone. Also, whenever there's oral administration, those test administrators have a booklet. They're reading the questions. They should not be talking to anyone about those questions. And then when we get to TELPAS, when you do the calibration activities, those are considered secure as well. All right, compliance helps to prevent a lot of the irregularities, and one of the biggest, what's the word I want to use, contributors to irregularities is poor training. And you guys know, there's a lot of information we're giving you today, and we're trying to get through it to get you out by 12 o'clock, and we feel rushed, you feel, oh, that was too much in a short period of time. Your test administrators are going to feel the same way. We get a lot of irregularities from test administrators, and their statements will say, I didn't know couldn't do that. I didn't know. So maybe you put it in a PowerPoint, but maybe you clicked too quickly. Maybe you had brand new test administrators that just sat there and didn't ask any questions. So think about when you're doing your training to make sure your people understand what they're supposed to do. And it's not even just that test administrator training. What we heard in the meeting yesterday was you need a separate training for your test administrators that are providing oral administration. You can't just say, oh, here's your manual, read to the kids. Because a lot of the irregularities, they read the passages. They read things that they weren't supposed to. We read the whole entire test. Another thing with oral administration is it's not if a kid asks for it. If a kid has oral administration as an accommodation, that test administrator has to do the whole thing. You don't wait till the kid asks. Okay, so there's other little issues with oral administration. Should be a separate training, should be a separate sign-in sheet. Because when I investigate, and we've had a lot of cases, where's the sign-in sheet for the separate training? Oh no, we didn't get any training for oral administration. Okay? Another type of training that you need to be sure to have is, if you're doing online testing, train those test administrators that are going to be working with those computers. There's a lot of tutorials for the kids to practice online testing. Your test administrators that are going to be in those computer labs need to get that training as well. A lot of times what we see, especially with TELPAS, schools will put the teacher assistants in there. I'm not saying they can't handle it. It's about the training. Make sure that they understand when to submit, when to do this, what if we put the wrong kid and pull some. There's all kinds of little issues that can take place. So you need a separate training and a sign-in sheet for your online test administrators. Monitoring.
I'm sorry, you just said something that I need clarification on. With SPED and 504, you said that you have to read those questions, not if the student asks. Is it the same for students who are 504 and decide whether they want to come out of the classroom to test? Do we have to pull them, or that's a choice?
Okay, she's asking some questions. I said that if a kid has oral administration in their IEP, that you have to provide oral administration. You don't wait till the kids ask. She's also saying, what if a kid is supposed to be in small group and they don't want to be in a small group? A lot of the times what I would do when it involved accommodations like that, I would call the parent. Now, if the kid is 18, they can decide what they're going to do. But I would call the parent and say, hey, your IEP says the kid is supposed to do this. Because I had kids at the high school, because that's where I was, they didn't want to look different, so they wanted to stay in the classroom with their friends. Call the parent if they're under 18.
There's also 504 accommodations where they can have questions read if they request them.
504 accommodations, they can request questions to be read to them. That's separate from if it says oral administration.
No,
Right,
it's the
but
same thing.
Where do I put all those millions of different?
That's what I'm saying, it's the same thing.
I mean, you know.
No, you don't have to have separate, yeah, you need a separate one for oral administration.
Right.
I'm just saying,
So in a regular room, if I ask for something to be read, the teacher can read it to me.
If you
Nobody
have-
else can hear?
if you only have one kid, then just tell that test administrator, just know this kid may ask, and then they can do it quietly. Now, if you have several kids, I might make a small group with that situation, and none of them may ask for anything to be read. Yeah, you don't have enough test administrators to start separating everybody. Monitor your administrations. Walk around, make sure your people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, especially the first day of testing. Catch any mistakes that, so you can prevent further irregularities. And then always know that any irregularity has to be reported. All right, 2 types of irregularities. Serious ones, these are the severe ones. And I'll give you some numbers in a few minutes. These are the ones that when I come out to investigate, I send all the information to TEA because there may be disciplinary action that TEA will take on the individuals that are involved. Procedural irregularities are considered less severe. Minor deviations from testing procedures, I think they're just as serious because in both cases, there's a good chance that kids' scores are going to be invalidated. That's bad for the kid, that's bad for the teacher of record because they won't get a TEI. And if it was your kid in your classroom, you would be pretty upset too if that test administrator did some kind of procedure irregularity that invalidated those scores. Some examples of serious ones. Directly or indirectly assisting students, that's actually giving them the answers, telling them to go back and rework their answer. Maybe they point and say, you probably need to look at that one again. Viewing secure test content at any time, before, during, or after. I mentioned that test administrators should not be reading the questions. That's what they're doing when they're walking around actively monitoring, and I'm not monitoring you, I'm just standing over here. But when the kids tell me that she stood there for a couple of minutes, I'll ask the kids, what do you think she was doing? She was reading the questions. You shouldn't be discussing the test content, and a lot of times with oral administration, because those test administrators have the questions, they actually talk to teachers of record, to other people about the content. Shouldn't be tampering or changing student responses. Shouldn't be solving secure test questions. So I'm the test administrator, I'm reading the question, what do you think I'm doing? I'm looking for the answer. Exactly, I'm solving it. They shouldn't be scoring student tests. I've had cases where the test administrator will talk to the teacher of record. The teacher of record will say, how did the kids do? Oh, I think most of them probably passed. Well, how would you know? How could you even say that? You were doing a couple of those things to be able to have that discussion. And then failing to report a serious irregularity is considered a serious irregularity. And notice, if you're directly or indirectly assisting students, you're probably doing a couple other things, right? You're viewing the test, you're solving the questions, if you're able to help the kids. So it's not just one and done, you get a couple under your belt. Again, these are severe breaches of test security. They must be immediately investigated by the Office of Test Security. That's me, so you need to call me right away because I need to tell TEA quickly that this is taking place. At the TEA level, the information, the persons involved, they are considered for disciplinary action. At our level, I take all my evidence and reports and I give them to Professional Standards Office, Employer Relations, and HCM. And there's also disciplinary action taken at our level, meaning people get terminated. TEA takes care of your credentials, and we terminate. Not me, HCM. Some procedural irregularities. These are less serious, but to me, just as equally important. Losing answer documents or test booklets, kids getting the wrong test, failing to provide an accommodation. Can't believe how common that is. Or giving unallowable accommodations. And that goes back to training. Your test administrators don't understand if you have a small group and kids have different accommodations, they give all the kids the same accommodation. Not reading the directions verbatim, and then not monitoring kids or materials. These are less serious. We do not have to call TEA about this. We do have to report them to TEA. And then I also mentioned here about reporting them on our TISV form. You still report the serious ones on the TISV form, but because there's so many more procedural ones, this gets pretty common. penalties. And I put invalidating student test results because I think that's the most important penalty. I think that's not fair to the kids when the adults are the ones making the mistakes. At the TEA level, they can put restrictions on your certificate, they can give you a reprimand, they can suspend your certificate, or they can revoke your certificate. They can also be considered Class C misdemeanors. And then at the district level, it can lower accreditation status or change the accountability rating. And for schools that are considered charter schools, they can revoke their programs. Here are numbers. And last year's at the bottom, 2018, 2019, we had a total of 637 irregularities that were reported. I feel certain there are more, but we didn't report it because some of the questions we get, and I speak to the other coordinators, and did so-and-so finally report this? They called us about this, and I'll look and I'll say, no, it was never reported, so. 552 procedural, 8 serious, 77 student cheating. I'll talk about other in a minute. Go back up to the previous year. We have 498. So we had about 160 more last year than we did the year before. So part of me says we're just doing a better job of reporting, right? Or, thank you. Maybe we have more because now we're checking your seating charts. And there were a lot of irregularities for that reason. I think we still have too many, regardless of the number. And these procedural ones are very preventable. Let's talk about the others. Oh, and by the way, the numbers for student cheating, it's just whether your test administrator is actively monitoring or not. I feel certain that there are more kids cheating. They're just not getting caught. And the same number of serious cases, 8 and 8, those are the ones I get to investigate. Others, we've got to stop getting into the habit of reporting everything that happens because sometimes they're not irregularities. And you're reporting it, and when they get on the TISV system, I don't want to delete documentation, so I put it in my other category. But we're going to do better about having these. And one major example that happens all the time is you catch a kid, and when I say you, I mean your test administrator most of the time. Catch a kid with a cell phone, and you report it as an irregularity. But they didn't use it for cheating. You let them finish testing. It's not an irregularity. Now, if they did use it for cheating, then it is an irregularity. You see the difference? Well, you have to, the question is, how do you know? You at the campus are the ones that are going to decide if it's cheating or not. A kid's cell phone fell out of his pocket. It was turned off. Your test administrator says, no, I don't think they used it. You let him finish testing. Now, you have your own disciplinary action for kids with cell phones. You pick it up, they come the next day and pay $15, or the parent has to come pick it up or whatever. That's perfectly okay. It's not a testing irregularity. You don't have to report that. Now, a kid's phone falls out of the pocket and it's turned on, and your assistant principal or whoever checks it and they can see that there's pictures of the test, that's cheating. You report that as an irregularity. Do you see the difference? Do not report everything. We have things like, y'all ended up having, not a fire drill because there was an actual fire. Well, you have already talked to your staff about, in the event that we have something like that happen, or bad weather or something, leave the tests in the room, lock the door, and then we get out, because we got to get out, right? Okay, all you do is you stop the time, and then when they come back in, you start the time and keep on going. That's not an irregularity. Now, if time gets involved, you'll call us, we'll talk to TEA, and then we'll work through it after that.
Question on this, because we report the College Board violations, PSAT, SAT, AP. They do say if they are caught with a phone, that it is an irregularity. Do you still want us to, even if we don't think there's cheating, we still have to report it to them. Do you want us to still report it to you?
That's a great question. We normally say anything for ACT, PSAT,
AP.
all of that, you still have to report it on our system. No. I know they're a lot stricter about some things, so if you know it wasn't cheating, because some of you have zero tolerance, and you want to, if you want to, you have zero tolerance, we don't care if the phone is turned off or on, and we're going to invalidate, then you have to report it as cheating, even though it really wasn't. Okay? So, and if you have questions about whether something is or not an irregularity, call us and we'll walk you through it. But that's what those others stand for. And our goal is to reduce the numbers, please, because we keep on going up and up. Better reporting is great, but I'd rather just not have to report so many. All right, now we have another activity. And my lovely assistants will pass out some more. There's 10 items. And somebody else? Oh, thank you. There are 10 scenarios, and you need to identify whether they're considered procedural, serious, or other, and there's a space to the right that you can write the letter P, S, or N. You can work individually, you can work together. And if you don't know, you don't know. You'll know by the end. You're just identifying if it's procedural, serious, or not an irregularity. You don't need to go online and check all that stuff. Just do the best you can. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you were supposed to identify if these were procedural, serious, or not an irregularity. So the first one, a student turned in the test materials. When he finished, the test administrator told the student to go back and rework his free response answers.
Serious.
Serious. What type? What do you mean?
Rework is saying there's.
Rework means what did the test administrator do?
Yeah, but they did something wrong. The answer's wrong.
They viewed,
Yeah.
they solved, and then they directed the student to change the answers. Okay, that's a whole lot of nonsense going on that one. Number two, a student was caught texting while the test administration directions were being read. Not an irregularity. It was caught before testing had started, so it didn't really affect testing possibly, we don't know for sure. I would definitely have a talk with the test administrator about the fact that why did the kids still have the phone? Because and we know the kids will have two phones, right? The one they turn in and the one they keep, but that's why test administrators need to actively monitor. It could be, and we don't have enough information, that the kid was actually texting, had taken a picture of something and had texted, and then it would become a serious one. Okay, so maybe there wasn't enough information on that one, but just the way it reads, we're going to say it's not. And that would transfer to my wording as other. You wouldn't have to report that. Okay? Test administrator failed to check the students' test materials when they turned them in and accepted a blank answer document. Procedural. Because? What is the test administrator supposed to do when they
Make sure that they.
take that answer document, when the kid turns it in, look at the back, see if it's bubbled. If it's not, hey, if you didn't bubble, your answers go back and finish. Now, they're not supposed to look, oh, you didn't bubble number 5 and you didn't bubble number 12. They can't look that closely. It's just a general, make sure you have everything bubbled. And they're supposed to remind them during the whole testing time, don't forget to bubble your answers. You should not be getting any answer documents back from your test administrators that are blank, because that just means they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. 5th grade class was given 4th grade test booklets. A kid pointed it out to the test administrator before testing began, and students were given the correct grade level. That's not, this is always reported. This is an other. If it's caught before testing or doesn't impact testing, it's not an irregularity. Number 5, test administrator provided oral accommodations and then asked a curriculum person about a specific test question. That's serious. You don't discuss secure test content with anybody. Number 6, test administrator was playing games on her phone while kids were testing. Procedural, because what does that tell us about the test administrator? They're not monitoring. They're not supposed to be on their phone. They're not grading papers. They're not on their laptop. They're not reading a book. Number 7, a student refused to take the test, so the test coordinator marked the answer document score. That's not an irregularity. Sorry. So hopefully you talk to the kid and explain what's going to happen. That's not an irregularity. Number 8, test administrator noticed the student had not transferred their responses on their answer documents, so she copied them over from the test booklet for the student. That's serious. Test administrators don't go into a test booklet and look at secure test content to transfer information to the answer document. That is serious. I appreciate trying to help, but no, that's serious.
The only time the test administrator can do that is if they have a student that's a scribe.
And the statement is the only time a test administrator would do that is they have to transcribe something, but you would never do that by yourself. You always do it, they would do it in your presence or something else, and it would be understood this is what we're doing. So there'd be no question about that. But in our case, it's serious, because they just did it on their own. Number 9, an EL with a parent denial was not administered TELPAS, and you may not know anything about TELPAS, so this may have been a tough one for you. An EL with a parent denial was not administered TELPAS.
Serious, is it?
Procedural.
Procedural, okay.
An eligible student was not tested.
Yeah.
We hadn't talked a lot about that, so that's okay. Denials still have to be tested with TELPAS. It's not serious unless you intentionally didn't test them. Now we do, if you have a situation like on STAR where he's a bad kid, he's going to be disruptive, he's going to not even score well, and you tell him you don't need to come tomorrow for testing, that is serious. Okay? You don't want to, if they're absent, woo-hoo, great, but no, you don't want to tell them not to come. And then I would have a small group specifically for that kid anyway. And number 10, a test administrator was shredding the scratch paper and accidentally shredded a student's answer document. And now remember, in my mind, all procedural ones are serious, but in this case, this is procedural. Test administrators should collect the booklets, the answer documents, don't put the answer document in the booklet, collect any scratch paper, anything else that was used, and then bring it to you, and you're counting the booklets, the answer documents. Oh, look at all this extra scratch paper. You're the one that collects all that scratch paper from the test administrators, and then you can send it to the records management to shred. Okay? There should never be a case where a test administrator is shredding anything related to testing. So that's procedural. All right, hopefully you wrote the answers on there. This is not something that you would necessarily need to do with your test administrators. This is just more for you. All right, let's talk about how you submit an irregularity once you have identified it. Again, you're going to determine is it serious or procedural or not, and then from there, that's going to determine who you contact. If it's procedural, or you're not sure if it's an irregularity, you're going to contact the assessment department. And if you know it's serious, because you know it's staff cheating, you're going to call me for guidance, and I'll walk you through the next steps. You're always going to collect statements, and we have 2 documents on the assessment website, questions to answer, and the sample statement for the test coordinator. You, as a test coordinator, will always have to write a statement about whatever happened. And then anybody else involved will also have to write a statement. Because you're the one doing all the summarizing. There's some questions that have to be answered that only the test coordinator would know. So that sample statement on the assessment website is something I wrote, and I'm saying you can plagiarize it. Change the names and the dates and the test and whatever happened. But if you follow those guidelines on that sample statement, you will have answered all the questions. And I don't want to put my veteran test coordinators on blast, but you guys aren't writing complete statements. Well, one of the things that you tend to leave off is, what did you do with the answer document? I don't know if you submitted it for scoring. I don't know what you put for a score code. But if you look at all the questions or you just plagiarize a statement, you will have answered all the information. So please look at those resources on the assessment website. You're also going to report the information, the irregularity on the DISD irregularity link. And when you go to the assessment website, it says that, and you click on it, and it pulls up the link, pulls up the form for you. You just have to follow the directions. This is the top of the TISV form. And whether you're a veteran or not, you may have never seen this before. And what automatically pulls up is when you click on your school, and I always click on Bryan Adams because it's the first school that's listed. The left side of school information will always be populated. Now, if something has changed, that it's a different test coordinator, you can click in that box and change the name, change the contact information, but that will automatically pop up. The right side, test information, you're going to have to click on all of these boxes and fill that information out. And we added something to this section down here. How many kids were involved? We added none. Because sometimes if you find booklets that you didn't turn in by the deadline, it didn't affect any kids, so we added that button. If you try to submit and you've left any of these blank, it won't let you submit. We've set it up to where a little red box will pop up so that you know what's missing. This is the bottom of the form, and it's all on one page, but I couldn't fit it. On the left side are all some examples of types of irregularities. It's not everything that can ever happen, but some of the more common ones. If there's something that happens down here where it says other incident, this is where you type in a test administrator was using a cell phone. I mean, you could have marked their test administrator wasn't actively monitoring or something, but that's not where you put your statements. That's not where you write your statement, because sometimes I have a whole statement in there. That's not where you put your statement. That's just any additional information you need us to know about. Please be sure you use Chrome as your browser, and I get these phone calls all the time. I can't attach any statements. It's because you didn't disable the pop-up blockers. Okay? If you have any questions, you call or email me. When you're ready to submit, you attach statements. It'll show a little box up there for your file. I create a file like December 2019 EOC. So any statements, irregularities go in that file, so when you need to attach a statement, you can pull from that file. And then you have another one for April EOC or December ACP or fall ACP or whatever. Create different files for all the different tests, so it'll be easy to find your statements. And then you send report. And once you send the report, you'll get a little pop-up that says submission complete. It'll send you an email, it'll send me an email, and it'll send your principal an email saying that this has been submitted. Resources. Again, on the assessment website, there is a little 2-page, 3-page steps for submitting a testing irregularity. I highly recommend, if you have not looked at it, you pull it up, read the steps. It's kind of a steps for dummies. It really just takes you through the whole process. The questions to answer, the test coordinator sample statements, there's some for state and some for what we considered local tests, like ACPs are considered local tests. There's different questions that I ask. Yeah, I guess ACPs are the only ones for the local. Questions about reporting an irregularity. Okay? Let's walk through a scenario now. This says 5th grade math. It could be 7th grade math. It could be Algebra 1. So this is a case. You're the test coordinator at an elementary campus. You get a phone call from a parent saying that the kid said, I know I passed my STAR math test because Miss David pointed to the ones I got wrong and shook her head. I fixed my wrong ones. So the first thing you do, and your DOL is going to be exactly like this, so pay attention to what we're doing here. What type of irregularity is this? Serious. Is it just one irregularity?
Well, She
All of
solved them, she looked, she read, she solved, and she pointed
And
out.
she did. She read, she saw, she did. Or she saw, she read, and she did. So yes, three of those serious, they directly assisted by telling the kids they were wrong. They had to view the test to know it was wrong. And then they solved to be able to know, again, it was wrong. Okay? First step, you determine is it procedural or serious. In this case, it was serious. What is the next step? If it's serious, what is the next step you do?
Reporting.
Reporting? Yes. Call me. Actually, these are the next 3 steps, and it doesn't really matter which order. Anytime you have a serious one, definitely got to tell your principal, because I'll be talking to your principal. You got to call me, and your principal's got to tell the ED, because I'm going to be coming out to investigate. And they always want to be kept in the loop. So, and again, I don't really have a preference on the order of those, but they're people you need to tell in the event of a serious. If it was procedural, I would tell my principal, just because in case the ED asks the principal, hey, how's it going? The principal can say, hey, oh, we've had a couple of this or whatever. So don't ever leave your principal out of the loop, but definitely for serious, you call the Office of Test Security and make sure the ED knows. What do you think are the next steps after that? Let's go back to reporting. Get your statements. Very good. And by the way, if you ever have to get statements from students, don't make the mistake of typing the kids' statements up. If you get statements from kids, you have them write it in their own handwriting, you put the date, and that's their statement. Does not matter if it's in English or Spanish. So sometimes your bilingual kids, not so much at the secondary level, all they can do is write in Spanish, and I can translate, that's not a problem. Follow your sample statement guidelines. I'm going to ask you for copies of seating charts, rosters, oaths, training materials, sign-in sheets, all that stuff that I told you have to keep anyway. You're going to submit irregularly on the online TISB form, and you may not have all the information, but you want to go ahead and submit it on there so we can know it's already on there. You may not have all your statements, and that's okay. And really, in a serious case, this, towards the end, is the least of the priority. I need to know so I can get out there and start the investigation. And then we'll take care of the paperwork as we go along. Sometimes you may have to send or email me some documentation, and then you're going to create a plan of action in order to avoid this from happening again. All right. Let's do your DOL. So to yourselves, read that, write down a couple of things or get in your mind. I'll give you about a minute or 2 to think about that, and then we'll talk about it. Okay. First question, procedural or serious? Serious? Procedural? I feel like I have about half and half. It's procedural. Again, what am I going to tell you? I think it's serious because it could impact a kid's score. But in paper pencil area, DEA, it's considered procedural. And what would be the irregularity?
Accommodation.
Failure to provide a documented accommodation. Okay? What is your next step? Before you get to reports. Call who? You don't call me for procedural. First of all, a lot of you do call me about procedural. You don't need to call me for procedural ones. Because I'm going to tell you, call the coordinators. Call the coordinators. Call the assessment department and say, oops, I did this, what happens next? And they'll walk you through the next step. I can do that too, but I'm usually getting all the serious phone calls. Who else do you need to tell?
Principal.
Your principal. This is a case where you're probably going to have to contact the parent. Okay, so you definitely need to tell your principal. And so you tell your principal, you call the assessment department, one of the coordinators is going to say, okay, you need to call the parent. And you need to say, hey, Johnny didn't get oral administration, he took the test, we've already talked to Johnny, he thinks he probably did okay, do you want us to score it or not? And you give the parent the option of scoring it or not. If, nope, I don't want it scored because he didn't get the comment. Okay, then you bubble the O. I do want it scored, you bubble the S. You also need to tell them of all the possible consequences of scoring or not scoring. Now this is 7th grade. It's not an SSI grade. You know, this is RENA talking. This is not Office of Test Security talking. I think it should always be scored because it's possible they passed it. And if you don't score it, you don't know. Especially 7th grade. It's not an SSI grade. High schools, if it was Algebra 1, yeah, let's score it because if not, for sure he's going to have to retest and this kid needs it to graduate. So my recommendation is always, let's score it. Yeah, worst case scenario, they fail, they don't have a score, whatever, but at least we know how to move on from there. Okay? If a kid failed it, was it really not having the oral administration or was the kid just not ready for it? So maybe we need to do additional tutoring or something with the kid. That's just RENA talking, though. You, again, the parent needs to know the options and the possible consequences either way. Don't make this decision to scoring on your own. So after you've told your principal, you've called the assessment department, you've talked to the parent, what do you do next? You put it on the TISV form. So what do you need to collect?
Statements.
Statements from? Definitely you have to write one as a test coordinator because you're going to end up in your statement letting us know whether the document was scored or submitted for scoring and what the score code was. I need to know, why didn't the test administrator provide oral administration? And I'm telling you what I hear in the statements from those test administrators, I didn't know is what those test administrators, because it's a small group, maybe they have different grade levels. Be sure you train your test administrators so they understand what that means. Somebody said a student statement. This is a case, you don't really need a student statement. It just kind of, it didn't happen. Now usually the kid will tell the teacher of record, and that's how you find out about it. So maybe the teacher of record has to write a statement because that was the first adult that heard it. So in this case, you wouldn't need a statement from a student. And if you're not sure, call and ask, and we'll tell you who needs to write a statement. Questions about, but y'all made 100, by the way, on your DOL. Because we have such a smart group. All right, let's look at a couple of things now. Last time we told you about the local DISD principal and TC oath. Hopefully you've already gotten those signed and sent in. Something new is the state oath that you picked up. Everybody see that? They redid, TEA redid the oath, so it looks a little different from the previous years. So whatever copies you made from last year, you need to throw those out. Make copies of this one. This is considered a general oath, so everybody at your campus will sign the same oath. So what I need for you to think about right now, don't write on it because you need to make copies. You need to sign one for you because on the back of it, there's a place there where you have to, if you're the test coordinator, you have to initial some boxes. Okay? If you have an assistant test coordinator that's non-certified, on the back, there's another little place that they have to initial, as well as the front, and they need to put who supervises them. Your principal has to fill one of these out, not the test coordinator part, or the non-certified, because that's not them. So you might have several of these that you need to submit. And then when you have your first test administrator training, for a state test. This is for state. This is not for ACPs. The district oaths that we'll talk about at the ACP meeting are the ones that test administrators have to sign. When you get ready to do EOCs, sorry middle school, doesn't apply to you. Yeah. Then your test administrators will sign this one also. Your test administrators. It says general up at the top. TEA is trying to make it easy, saying one oath for everybody, but there's just different boxes that different people have to, everybody pretty much initials the front and part of the back. And then there's a place for your non-certified people and then a place for test coordinator. Do not pass these out to your test administrators before your meeting. They should sign it after your meeting. And this one doesn't count for ACPs. This is just, and I can't, several situations last spring when I'd ask for oaths, they'd send me the district oath when it was a STAR test. Or they send me this when it was ACP. And I'm like, no, we have two separate. This is for STAR, EOC, TELPAS, the state test that they mentioned in their earlier slide. And then the local one is for ACPs, Terra Nova. I know there's another one. Oh well, but it's going to apply to secondary. Any questions about that oath? Okay, and at the bottom of the back page, it says scan and send it to testsecurity@dallasisd.org. We talked about the secure storage form. Hopefully you've completed that. You got it last time. And then the campus test security plan, that's due by October 29th. We talked about that one last time. And high schools, I'm going to get to you in a minute. Be sure all these documents that we're talking about, you will scan separate attachments. These are the oaths. This is a secure storage form. This is the campus test security plan. You're going to scan them separately, and you can attach them to one email to test security, so that when I get them, I can put them all in the right place. High schools, you picked up another form, or middle schools, I guess, if you're testing any kids. They're not? Okay. It's the counts. And this is not for us to send you materials. This is for monitoring purposes. So somebody's going to come out to your campus to monitor during EOC. So I need to, on my system, set up which day somebody's going to come out to your campus. Okay? So I need to know English 1, we know is already testing December 10th. December 12th is English 2. I need to know how many students approximately you're testing that day. And then when are you testing Algebra 1, Biology, and U.S. History, and how many kids approximately are you testing? So that I can set up the system for the monitors to select which date, which campus they want to come out and visit. Okay? Do not send this one to test security. There, highlighted in orange, it says send it to me directly, so that I can create the file and get that set up. And I do say, please send it by November 4th. Any questions about that form? And if you're brand new and you're not sure, call, and we'll help you fill that out. We're going to have a lunch and learn about test security on October 25th. It's a week from 2 weeks from Friday. In this room from 12 to 1-ish. Bring your laptop. We're going to review steps for submitting a testing irregularity. We're going to practice online actually submitting one. We're going to talk about seating charts some more. So if you're brand new, especially, and some of this just is like, oh, it's too much, I need some more one-on-one time, please come. Or with any other questions about test security. Veterans, if you've never had to report an irregularity, and that's not because it didn't happen, it's just because you didn't report it, feel free to come as well. Any questions? Pick up your lunch on the way, and we'll start at 12 o'clock, and then we can eat and be merry and talk about test security. How fun is that? And then if you need help, this is our information. That's my direct email and phone number, the test security email where you're sending your documents, assessment, website, the main number, TC support, that's where you get those emails with all the information, and then the service center. And you have a couple of handouts that I want to just briefly talk about. One is you got the DCCR. It says TEA up at the top, security. That is, the girls mentioned about the DCCR being an online manual. I'm old school, I don't really like it, because I kind of want to take notes and put sticky notes and things on it, but Karen made a copy of the test security part. So there's a lot of information in there about testing irregularities. Again, the difference between serious and procedural. There's a section there about incidents that are not testing irregularities. We talked a little bit about that. There's a section on how to avoid testing irregularities. I highly recommend you look over that because a lot of these can be prevented. At the back of all of that, we have added, flip over to the back like the last 3 or 4 pages, copies of our general seating charts, the 2-page and the 3-page. And it has all the required elements on there. Again, if you're going to use a different one, that's okay, but it's got to have all this information on there. Be sure they draw a picture in that box. And then you have a copy of the state oath. Notice at the top it says DEA. It's only for state tests or SPAR, EOC, TELPAS, not ACPs. What else did you pick up back there?
Green-hole punch, did we put it in your green binder?
It can go in your binder since it's already punched. You should have gotten all those other forms last time except for this high school form. Questions? Oh, the scenario that we did, there is one more handout I have for you. It's several pages, so there are 6 different, Brent's going to pass it out, 6 different irregularities on there with the steps to follow so that in the event something else happens, and again, don't worry about, oh, well, that says 5th grade or that says this or that. Irregularities are irregularities. Just change the subject and it's still the same irregularity. So I've highlighted in red what the irregularity is and then the next steps that you can review to just get some other ideas of what else can happen. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen? Yes? You need, okay. If you decide to come to the Lunch and Learn, we don't have a registration for it, but if you could just shoot me an email that you're coming, that would just help in case I need to run some handouts or whatever. I want to be prepared for how big or small the group is. Any other questions? You have our contact information. Call us, email us. My philosophy is we can prevent a lot of these things. We don't want to impact kids' scores, teachers' TEIs, or district accountability. So let's follow all the directions. Thank you.
As always, we thank you for being such an attentive audience. We have guests. Do you have anything you want to interject? Okay. Well, we hope that you have a wonderful afternoon. Please feel free to stop and talk to us if you have any questions or any clarification on anything that was stated today. Have a great day.